Welcome back. And today I'm very excited to introduce to you and to enjoy talking with Brigitte Mars, who is an herbalist, an author, a teacher, and so much more. So we're going to dive in to her latest book, which is actually a rendition of, I think, a book that came out 20 years ago. It was a very popular book called Addiction Free Naturally. So welcome, Brigitte.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So exciting news that you have a re-release of your very popular Addiction Free Naturally herbalist book. Yes.
So I wrote the book with Inner Traditions about 20 years ago. And then, a lot has changed in 20 years. We didn't have the opioid crisis that is now prevalent. There's been a lot of movement of legalization of cannabis. There's been a lot of research, even on psychedelic therapy being helpful. When I first wrote the book, they didn't want to include anything illegal like cocaine addiction or heroin addiction. So now I have the opportunity to address all those things. And, I feel that in our quest for natural health and healing, we can do all the great things, buy organic food, have a yoga practice, take great supplements. But if there's an addiction that's really prevalent that is undermining our health, that's going to impair our ability to really achieve true health. And some addictions are legal.
Yes. Well, you talk in the book a lot about a variety of different types of addictions, from sugar addiction to alcohol, to tobacco, to drugs, to various things, and give kind of an outline, if you will, of supplements and practices, that are very popular now. Some of them are very well known, and some of them are, more unique. But what I like about the book is it's kind of like not an encyclopedia, but you can kind of go directly towards the area that you need assistance with, instead of reading chapters and chapters about all these kinds of herbs and supplements that may not be relevant for a person. So it's laid out very nicely. Work well done with that. What got you most interested in addiction in general as an herbalist?
Well, I've written 14 books and I have had a private practice for many years. And I see people, they come in with their food journals and they bring the great supplements, and yet maybe they're still dealing with a health issue. And I felt, drinking coffee is not helping the situation, or addiction to sugar, which we really don't even consider a bad thing, but it's very prevalent. And I feel that sugar is underlying addictive behavior in general, because a lot of substances that people abuse have the effects of sugar. Like, we don't really think it's a sugar addiction if we're putting sugar in our coffee and then having, a candy bar, and how alcohol is made from a ferment with really, sweet things and sugar, and how very often people will give up an addiction and then overeat. And as long as we're addicted to sugar, it really keeps the addictive loop going on. Even tobacco is cured in sugar. Cannabis will elevate blood sugar temporarily, and then when it drops, then people feel like extremely hungry. So I feel it's really important to address some of the underlying causes. And we know that many people will give up a substance and then go to another one.
Yes.
So we're trying to really get to the core issues and help people let go of that.
Yes. Well, do you believe that it is possible for someone to be completely addiction free?
Sure, I think it's possible. And there's some people who don't really have addictive type personalities. So I also explore in the book what are some of the things that might make people more prone to addiction. And so we certainly know that there's a genetic compound, that we also have the role models that we look up to, and what is being programmed to us on through the media. We also, don't think that things that are behaviors might be addictive, but could Facebook or video games or inappropriate relationships, addicted to love, looking for love in all the wrong places. So, and I think that we are a very addictive culture, and it is a big business. So, but I do think that it's possible to unplug from all of it. And one thing I would like to see a lot more of is people taking up the traditional art of handcrafts, that if we look to our ancestry, maybe they were getting together, but maybe they were carving with wood or working on a quilt or crocheting or making socks. And that's something that's really gone from our culture. And I feel that that would be a really great way to keep our hands busy. Our ancestors would say idle fingers are the devil's playground. And
Yeah.
now we don't really make as many things with our hands. And so I find that things like overeating or over scrolling, you have nothing to show for your time of doing all that. And what if we built our self-esteem and kept the connection between our hands and our brain active by creating something of beauty? And it could be sketching, but I feel like that would be one simple technique that everyone could find, what it is that they want to do. And so I might go to a party and bring a little portable craft that I'm doing because it's late and I want to talk with my friends, but I don't want to be overeating, and I'm not a drinker, and but I want to hang out with my friends and talk with them. So we need to find other ways to cope with things like boredom and anxiety.
Well, especially now. So I think during the pandemic, one of the positive things that I have seen come out of it is people are getting kind of more reconnected to their hobbies, or doing miniature farming in their yards or what have you. We certainly have more time to explore the arts and crafts, and some people are moving towards that direction. But I know boredom is a big factor, not only just during the pandemic, but it's certainly exacerbated right now, of why we go towards substances and unhealthy activities and so forth. But it's not the only reason. I talk a lot about addiction from the standpoint of energy and emotional health and vibrational frequency and that kind of thing. So it's very important that I think we look at all aspects of it, but first start with giving our bodies the support that we need. And your book is very helpful for that. So if someone were to just look in your book and go to the section on sugar or tobacco or something like that, and support their body with those supplements, that will help balance, I'm sure, balance what's going on inside, so that we have a calmer nervous system, so that we have a more integrated feeling and not such strong cravings. Or how will the supplements and foods that you suggest and herbs directly affect and help a person through an addiction?
Well, thank you for your excellent question. I'm not going to start out with supplements. I'm going to start out in the book, even though people might go to the section that relates to them, whether it's alcohol or opiate addiction, lifestyle techniques are where I like to start. So we talked about crafts, but I also think that we need to find other ways to reward ourselves. And so one of the practices I suggest is make a list of other ways you could reward yourself. So for me, it might be take an aromatherapy bath, or go for a walk, or work in the garden, or call a friend, or read a novel, or something that's really pleasurable. Because we work hard, we have stress, and then we have all these little ditties going through our mind about that, we deserve a break today, or I haven't got time for the pain, or whatever it is. So what are ways that we can really compensate for the stress that we encounter? And so making a list would be a good place to start. And then making a list of what are some of the ramifications of this addiction. What is it costing me? What is it costing financially, but also is it affecting my ability to sleep well? Is it affecting my relationships? Is it affecting, where I get invited to? So we may even need to reevaluate the people that we hang out with, because very often we might engage in a practice because it's what our friends are doing, or it's what goes on. So I'm really big on having a journal and people writing down, well, what are some of the triggers? When is it that you're more likely to smoke or drink or snort coke, or whatever it is? And it might be when I'm around these people, or Friday afternoon, or when I get off work, or the weekends. So looking at that and changing some of the behaviors where I like to start. And then the next step, but before supplements, would be, how can I make my diet the most conducive to being strong and resilient to addiction. So we know that if we're in an over acidic state, because we're eating a lot of sugar and, maybe even grains or, milkshakes and things like that, if we're more acidic, it tends to make us feel more anxious and crave more of these substances. So a simple thing would be, how can we get more alkaline? Eating more fresh fruits and vegetables, eating more greens would be a good way. Could we manage a salad every day and making our own dressing with olive oil, for example? And expanding our food repertoire. I like to encourage people to eat all the colors of the rainbow from the produce section, not the cereal section. So that would be another place to start. And good quality fats can also help us to feel calmer. So, the whole fat-free thing isn't going to fly. We want to look at, could eating avocados or nuts and seeds or like good quality oils be effective? So that's the next step. And then there may be herbs that can help. And so for each addiction, you find the herbs that are going to satisfy some of those same receptor sites, whether it be herbs that calm anxiety or give you more energy or help you sleep better, for example. And then come the supplements. So they're all part of it, but there are some supplements that in general can be really helpful. And I'm happy to chat about those.
Okay, sure. Well, I appreciate you mentioning about the lifestyle, because even as much information as we all have now, as much, access to resources that we have, so many people still want a quick fix. And even if they don't like the medicine route, they'll go for the supplement route. And it really does need, I agree, a much more thorough lifestyle approach when we do anything, when we make any positive change in our life. So I appreciate you saying that. So what are some of the supplements that you would, or herbs? I love herbs myself, and so I could sit and talk to you all day about herbs. But what are some of those, just in general, for someone that has like anxiety or that restless mind or, cravings that seem impossible to shake? What are some of the herbs or supplements that are your go-tos?
Well, I will start with the supplements. So this is in general, and of course for different addictions, other supplements might be more appropriate. But if I were to give like a blanket statement, I'd say calcium, magnesium is going to calm the nervous system, help you to sleep. And sometimes when people give up an addiction, they even experience a lot of anxiety or even tremors. And so keep in mind that magnesium is going to relax muscles. It's going to help you to sleep. It's going to help relieve muscle spasms. So that would be a good one, calcium, magnesium. A B complex is really easy to find. And of course, I'm going to suggest that you buy your supplements at a natural food store or holistic pharmacy, because you don't want preservatives and artificial color, which could cause their own type of problems. So a B vitamin complex, an essential fatty acid supplement. And there are vegan sources of it as well, like omega, a vegan omega-3, but the fish oils, omega 3 fatty acids can have a calming effect on the nervous system. There's also an amino acid called L-glutamine, which is usually taken between meals, and L-glutamine could be used as a powder and stirred into things like water or applesauce, for example, and that helps to stabilize blood sugar. And that's especially good for sugar cravings, alcohol cravings. And then one last one is GTF chromium. And chromium is a trace mineral, and the GTF stands for glucose tolerance factor. So that, taken between a meal, can help keep your blood sugar level stable and minimize cravings. So when people think, oh, it's going to be expensive, I have to go to the health food store, that's not part of my route. If you start realizing what you're spending on beer or a mocha latte every day, or a gram of Coke or a bag of smack or whatever it is, like, go to the health food store and get some supplements to support yourself, because you don't just need to rely on willpower alone. Right. There are things that nature provides that can help support you in your quest for a better life.
Yes. Well, I think that's the whole point of nature, when we work together and really utilize each other's offerings, then we come more into balance. So I love that. What, as far as herbs, do you work primarily with, do you work with all kinds of herbs, like Eastern Chinese herbs? Do you work with more botanicals from the States? What is your usage of herbs yourself?
Well, I'm studied in herbs of all the world, Ayurvedic and Chinese herbs. Although, in this time, I really think we should focus on plants that grow on our continent.
Mhm.
Um, I'd hate to be reliant on a slow boat from China or India to bring me what I need. And I also feel that supporting local farmers and small farms here. However, one of my teachers wrote a book called Planetary Herbology. So I'm open to using all of the herbs from everywhere, but I really do like focusing on herbs that grow on this continent. And there are herbs that might grow in Asia that could be cultivated and grown here.
Right.
So it's really about that. So for example, an herb that people think is a weed, like dandelion, is an amazing plant. And I think that Americans have a big addiction to fossil fuel and being wasteful and wasting water. And so I would really like to just elevate the dandelion because the leaves could be eaten as a salad or made into a tea. It's very alkalinizing. And then the root is really good for detoxifying the liver. And we know that all drugs are going to be hard on the liver. So you use dandelion root as a tea or capsules. I don't want to give alcohol tinctures to someone who has an alcohol addiction.
Right.
So that would not be a smart thing to do. But dandelion root can help get rid of even old stored emotions in the body, but it is very detoxifying. And if caffeine is your addiction, you can also get roasted dandelion root that tastes a lot like coffee and give you an opportunity to gradually let go of, that cup of coffee because you're adding a little more dandelion root every day and then less and less of the coffee.
Yeah.
And so that's, just one example. But let's say an addiction to alcohol. There are herbs like angelica that are traditional. There's kudzu, which has been used in Asian medicine, but kudzu has spread very rapidly in North America, especially in the South. It can grow a foot a day. And there have been actual studies that show that when kudzu flower tea is offered to, I think it's hamsters that have been bred to be alcoholic, and they're offered water, kudzu tea, and alcohol, their alcohol intake goes down by about 50%. So that's not total, but I think for a lot of people drinking a lot less. And one thing that has been happening during this pandemic is alcohol and drug sales are way up and overdoses are way up. So we would like to think that people are using their time wisely and have more time to exercise and read and do crafts. But unfortunately, we have to find other ways.
Yes. Well, I totally agree. One question I want to ask just in general, because I used to work in health food stores, 30 years ago. That was my start. And I learned so much there, did a lot of training. But what I realized is so many people have a skewed idea about the potency or power of herbs and foods. And, there's still this mentality of relying on the pharmaceuticals or the man-made drugs to help us more or differently than herbs or food is possible. And so, I've had personal experience with certain herbs, whether it be allergic responses or just a heavy detox response or whatever, where they are very strong. And then other herbs, that are more adaptogens or more gentle on my system, you don't really notice so much. But I think herbs are extremely powerful and potent. And I'd like to kind of discuss, this myth or idea of why they aren't, or if they aren't, are they as potent and powerful?
Well, if we go back to the year 1900, about 80% of all the pharmaceuticals available were made from plants. We could look at birth control pills, which were a more recent invention in the 50s, were based on wild yam, Dioscorea villosa. We could look at some of the heart medicines, digoxin and digitoxin coming from the foxglove plant, which by the way is toxic. So don't be messing with that in your garden. We could look at even aspirin, which originally came from the herb meadowsweet and then was later found in willow bark and aspen trees. So one of the things that has happened is we've either extracted just one component from a plant, like the salicin. Usually it's an alkaloid, but a really important example is in South America, there's an herb that's used by the people for altitude sickness, for hunger, for energy. It's coca leaves. And coca leaves are really high in minerals. They have amino acids. And people don't seem to get addicted to chewing coca leaves. It's often recommended by your tour guide. When you get to, Colombia, get some coca leaves. It's going to help you deal with the altitude. But we started shipping coca leaves to Europe. And of course, being so civilized and sophisticated, we can't just use those messy green leaves. We have to refine it and turn the plant into a white crystalline powder. All right, called cocaine. And all of a sudden, there are no vitamins or minerals or cellulose, and it becomes very addicting. We could say the same thing about sugar. Sugar starts out as sugar cane, which has B vitamins and minerals in it, or from sugar beets, which has, iron and beta carotene. But we turn it into a white crystalline powder. The more we refine a substance, we don't have those balancing effects of trace minerals and chlorophyll that help to balance it. So when the pharmaceutical companies are wanting to market something, they have to spend a lot of money to have their drug approved. It's millions and millions of dollars. So there's no reason why a company would do all that study on something like, let's study dandelion leaves, when everybody has them in their backyard. So they need to either isolate the active ingredient or synthesize the supposed active ingredient. But we're often finding that by just using one alkaloid, it creates more side effects. It doesn't have the nourishment. Like, again, back to dandelion leaves, they're said to be as effective as a leading diuretic drug, Lasix, which has nothing to do with the eye surgery. And if you take diuretics, you become very deficient in potassium. But dandelion leaves give you potassium. But no one's studying the dandelion leaves. But yet we can look at the herbs and say they've been used by millions of people for thousands of years. And I don't think we can say that about a lot of new modern drugs. I work in a pharmacy. It's a holistic pharmacy called Pharmaca. So they do sell drugs and antibiotics, but then they have herbs and vitamins and essential oils. And we see drugs get recalled all the time. If you watch an hour of TV, what we're marketed is eat this bad food and then take these drugs. Bad food, more drugs. And then every once in a while, are you having a problem with this drug?
Right.
Call 1-800-BAD-DRUG. So I'm putting my faith in what nature has created. And I know nature can be difficult with hurricanes and tornadoes and superstorms and all that. But I do feel that there's a wisdom that we're often overlooking. And I do think that profit motive, because the studies are being focused on patented items, and you can't patent a plant.
Sure, you're right. Well, speaking to that, which you just referred to as the whole plant, these extracts and so forth, when you're taking herbs, there's now a lot of different options. Just if you were just to pick a single herb, you have the extract with this percentage of this, that, or the other. You have the whole leaf, you have the stem, you have the flower. There's so many different things to choose from. So in general, across the board, if there's an answer to this, is it better for a person to go for the extract that's been pulled from the plant or use the whole herb in your estimation?
Another great question. So certainly we don't want to give alcohol tinctures to someone who has an alcohol addiction. So we also need to look at what is going to be the most likely for the person to follow through on. So if it's a really bad tasting tea, like even though valerian might help you to sleep better and get off your sleeping pill addiction, valerian doesn't work for everybody. It works for some body types more than others, tends to work for people that feel cold more easily. But you're not going to like a tea. So maybe capsules will be your best bet. But some teas taste very delicious, but you may not want to drink a big cup of tea before bed to help you sleep, because you'll be getting up to go to the bathroom a few times. So I think that it really depends on the person, but very often convenience might be helpful for the person who has a substance abuse issue. So if it's available in a capsule, that might be great. But I also
But
think,
even within the capsule, there's options between the whole herb or the extracts.
yeah.
So which then is more potent, or how do you decide?
Well, sometimes it's good to talk to the person in the natural food store for a little guidance, because we're not all expected to be, experts on that. Of course, I wrote a book that does help take the mystery out of it, called The Desktop Guide to Herbal Medicine. But there are different parts of the plant. Do you want the leaf, the root, the flower? And so that takes a little bit of wisdom to be able to figure that out. So you can either read the book, Addiction Free Naturally, which is going to suggest what part of the plant. And some herbs have contraindications, like not to be used by pregnant women, or not to be combined with medication. Like, for example, people who are on antidepressants really shouldn't be using other herbs for depression, like St. John's wort, because it might be too much. So again, herbalism takes some study. And I'd like to say, before you embark on, taking an herb for a long period of time, you might want to read about it in 3 different places and see if that's right for you. You can also consult with someone who's knowledgeable about herbs. Unfortunately, our physicians are usually not educated in that realm. They have their expertise. So speaking to a naturopath, an acupuncturist, an herbalist might be a great way to set up a program. But I've also structured the book so there is enough research in there to kind of guide you to what part of the plant, some dosage guidelines, and contraindications as well.
Yeah, that's great and very helpful. I think one thing that people are frustrated with, especially trying to combine the world of medicine when they need it and then more natural approaches, is the medicines have so many contraindications, what you can and can't take around that. And, it's like, who do you call? Where do you go? The common person, the lay person doesn't necessarily know how to research, is this herb, this kind of thing that's going to affect this medicine that I'm taking? And then they get scared to support themselves in more natural ways because they want their medicine to be effective. So it gets to be a tricky thing, but I agree. I think finding that extra knowledge and support is very helpful. Well, I appreciate your book and all the work that you're doing. Are you still teaching?
I teach it. Yeah, I teach at Naropa University. The last semester was on Zoom, but I do teach a 10-week class. And, I was teaching in Iceland every other year, but, that kind of came to a halt. So hopefully, of course, I'm always going to teach.
Yes.
I'll find a way somehow. And I'd like to think that my books are being offered out there in the world so people can, get the download, even if, they can't find me.
Yes. Well, that's great. Well, we'll look out for you. And when does the book officially release? Is it out now?
Yeah, it's out now. Addiction Free Naturally, Inner Traditions. You can find it at BrigitteMars.com, Amazon, and Inner Traditions is a wonderful publishing house. I love so many of the things that they do. I read a lot of their books.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, one of the first things that I bought was my medicine cards from Inner Traditions. And I remember, just falling in love with that publishing company because they offer such wonderful and unique things. So, well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to speak with you. And I look forward to diving into more of your work and learning from you ongoing.
Thank you so much. Many blessings to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.